Oh no, I was reacting, very much reacting. But I thought of it as a fun learning experience too. Like I said, in A Killer Secret, I wanted it to be slow burn. I wanted you to have point of view from three different characters. And really, in that first novel, there weren't a whole lot of secondary or tertiary characters. I mean, there were, but they didn't get enough, screen time to really be a full-fledged character. So I wanted to play with point of view. What if I only had one person's point of view? I wanted to play with, like, what if I had way more characters than my first novel? And yeah, I had the reviews of, hey, this thing started out slow. So I thought, all right, I'll start something fast as well. Because, for me, I've only written 2 novels. I feel like I have a lot to learn. And I also feel like I don't know what I like to write best yet. The way that I like to write best yet. So I thought it would be a challenge, and it was certainly a fun one. And hopefully people love the story as well.
Okay, everyone, welcome to Living the Next Chapter. My guest is here today, and please be warned, you might be a little scared during our conversation, but it's for a good reason, because my author today writes in a genre that I love to talk about. This will be really fun for me. Jeff is here with me on the podcast. JeffBerney.com is the website. Go there. All the great information is there. And on top of everything else, Jeff likes whiskey. So if you're a whiskey lover, stick around and we'll get Jeff's picks on some of his favorites. Jeff, welcome to the podcast. Nice to have you here.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Yeah, when we talked originally, Jeff, I told you your voice is amazing. This should be a lot of fun. It just kind of hits you somewhere. And if you're having earbuds on right now, you're like, whoa. Yeah, it just kind of hits you internally. So I love having you on the podcast. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay, Jeff. So let's talk about this. Because again, if you're watching the video, behind Jeff is a wall of bottles. Any of your top favorites, we're not sponsored, by the way, any of your top favorite whiskeys that you would advise to a whiskey lover out there from your vast library behind you there?
I feel like this is a question that is like littered with landmines, like there are whiskey drinkers who only drink certain bottles. And I am a fairly new whiskey drinker, so by no means have the breadth of experience.
Okay.
But I have tried some scotches. My favorite scotch is the Balvenie 14. I think it's matured in Caribbean rum casks. I think I like a little bit sweeter whiskey, which is kind of
sounded so nice when you said that. By the way, I was ready to buy. I'm like, where's my wallet? Yeah. Okay, you go on.
And then Irish whiskey. I only started drinking this because of the name, but I actually really do enjoy it. It's called Writer's Tears, which super fitting, I think.
That's serendipitous right there. Yes.
And then bourbon. I'm from Missouri, Midwest, USA, and there's actually a distillery kind of north of Kansas City, Missouri, that had been one of the first kind of in the country before Prohibition. But after Prohibition, bourbon usually kind of matriculated down to Kentucky because they have the limestone springs. Well, this right here in Missouri is built on a limestone spring. So they kind of, dusted off the old recipe and just started bottling, I think last year. It's called, Ben Holiday, Missouri bourbon. So that's my favorite at the moment.
Nice. Now I know during Prohibition up here in Canada, we weren't very helpful because we were sending alcohol down to you guys.
Well, purely for medicinal purposes, I'm sure.
Purely to help. Just wanted to help. And there was some pretty interesting stories in my area of the world because I'm really close to the New York border. So we'd have some of your notorious people coming north to pick up stuff and go back home with it. So, so we kind of smuggled stuff into the States. I'm sorry about that, but we played our part.
I'm sure my grandparents appreciated it.
Awesome. Okay, so we're here to talk about writing, and everybody's here like, I want to go buy some whiskey, but that's good. Let's talk about your writing story. You write in an interesting genre. I'd love to talk about this. and maybe how you got started writing as an author. How did this all begin for you?
Yeah, so I have been wanting to be a writer since I was a kid. I would write short stories. My favorite classes were English and literature. And then for some weird reason, I went to school for pre-med. Now, that didn't last very long, not because I changed my mind, but because my grades were really bad. So I thought that was the universe telling me, hey, you probably shouldn't be anyone's doctor. And
Nice.
so I fell back. Yeah, I fell back on things that I liked. And again, it was writing and I liked the idea of marketing and advertising. So I got my degree in advertising and marketing. And so, you could say I've been writing every day since, but still kind of in the back of my head, I had that, hey, I want to write a novel. And my first goal was, okay, I'm going to write a novel before I turn 40. And just so the listeners know, I'll be 50 next year. I did hit that target, but the novel was really bad. And, you'll see some, established authors say, yeah, you write your first one and you put it in a drawer and you pretend it's not there. And that's kind of what I did in a digital drawer. And so it took me maybe 5 years to recuperate from that. I kind of went through this spiral of, oh man, maybe I'm not good enough. Maybe I'm not cut out to write a novel, even though that's what I wanted to do. And finally, enough time went by that I was like, I'm going to try this again. I sat down to write a book and I can't even remember what the topic was or what the story I wanted to write, but this other book came out. It's a psychological thriller. It's very dark. It's very twisted. It's a serial killer story. And so that's what I write. I write thrillers. I write dark, kind of gritty thrillers. To the point where, my wife and my parents are kind of my first, second, and third readers. And I think my mom has decided she's not going to read my books anymore.
And I can't sleep now. Thank you.
She's like, where did you get this and what did I do wrong?
How did I break you? I'm sorry. Wow.
So yeah, I'm a full-time advertising creative director and father of 7. Only 4 of them are still on the family payroll and in the house. The other 3, the other 3 have graduated and are out. Yeah.
Like that.
So this is kind of, I think of my writing. Well, first of all, I think of it as a business. I've always kind of had like an entrepreneurial kind of spirit. And when I decided, okay, I'm going to do this and be serious about it, I didn't want to just write it and send it off and hope that it was published somewhere. I really was interested in and specifically went after independent publishing or self-publishing because I wanted to understand the whole process from, writing to editing to formatting, publishing, marketing, and just really kind of be able to have more control. Maybe I'm more of a control freak than I think I am, but I just find the whole thing fascinating. Writing is actually a smaller piece of being an independent author than I had anticipated, but it's kind of cool. You get to do a little bit of everything.
So, Jeff, we have people listening that are thinking about writing or starting their first novel, their first book, and your comments around how your first novel wasn't what you hoped it would be and you put it away. Can you explain to the people, the authors that are writing, what it was about that novel particularly that you were like, no.
Yeah.
What was it?
I think I kind of made the novice mistake of writing too much of the truth, which sounds weird. Like it's a story that I made up, but a lot of the characters and the actions and the consequences were like real life, and a little bit too on the surface. I still kind of steal things that people say or situations that maybe, someone that I know has gone through. I'll, when they fit and make sense, I'll fictionalize them and twist them and make them, indistinguishable to the people who even lived them in real life. But that first novel, I didn't do that enough and it didn't to me, it was less fiction than it should have been. And I probably could have gone back and fixed it, but at that point I was just, downtrodden and felt, oh man, I just messed this whole thing up and I can't do anything.
Interesting, because when you look at the life of a comedian, for example, they're going to go write a new set. They're going to do a new set for whatever big show. They go to these small comedy clubs and they try new material out, and some of it's good, some of it's never going to see the light of day after that performance, right? But you have to play with it. You have to get it out and then deal with it, right?
Yeah. And I would say, to somebody who is starting out, like I write, there's obviously different lengths of books and everything that you can write. I write around the 90 to 95,000 words. And so just being able to say, hey, that first novel, I didn't personally like it. I didn't want to publish it, but I went on that 95,000 word marathon and I did that. So I learned a lot. I learned that I actually could write that many words. I could string that many words together. And I learned a lot about storytelling. My day job is advertising. So I write 30-second, 60-second spots. I write, direct mail pieces. I write really small snippets, and learning how to break a 90,000 word novel down into, 20 chapters, and each chapter down into like 3 or 4 scenes. That kind of helped me figure out, okay, the goal maybe seems huge at the beginning, but it's one scene at a time, one sentence at a time. And then you get there and you just have to trust that process.
So Jeff, when you're looking at writing something new, are you pulling from different resources? Are you pulling from things that you've seen, you've read, other people that inspire you to do this? Or are you trying to go at this from your own thought pattern? I'll give you an example. A musician who's heavily influenced by another musician will start to sound like that musician. Their music sounds like them. How they write sounds like them. And it feels like they're just doing a cover version, basically, of the other artist. How do you keep other people out of your writing so you don't sound like anyone else? But how do you stay inspired at the same time?
Oh, that's a great question, because I think when you are an earlier in your writing journey, I think you do tend to say, oh, I really like John Irving, who's one of my literary heroes. And so you kind of think like him, or I really love Stephen King and the way he describes things. And so you kind of try to write like him. And I think eventually all the things that have inspired you, I think kind of meld together in your brain in a unique way that's unique to you, because you have those specific inspirations. And then you start finding your voice. I've written 2 novels. I feel like the second one is really where I started to find my unique voice. Not to say that the first novel's not good. I love it still, but I can see, I maybe pulled myself back there, or I would have said that differently today. But the second novel, it felt more natural when I was writing it. And I think that's the thing that you just have to continue writing to kind of work that voice out.
So when you approach a new novel, Jeff, are you writing in reverse? Do you have a final thought and you work your way backwards and build the story? Or are you starting from the beginning and let's see where it goes?
I am definitely an outliner. I'm kind of a hybrid. I do need to know what the end point is, because I feel like, at least for me, and I know there's lots of people who just sit down and type. I mean, there's lots of people. I mean, Stephen King is famously, he does not outline. He doesn't even know how a story's going to end. He just starts. Oh. I would argue that some of his books, you could tell that. Mm-hmm. I'm not complaining. He certainly has made a wonderful living, a living that I would love to have. But, some people can do that. I've tried that, and I get caught up in my own thoughts, and, maybe I should go this way. Oh, maybe I should go this way. And to me, that takes too much time, and I'd rather spend that time up front. And I think that's the difference. I think people who just sit down and write, they figure it out as they go, and it takes about the same amount of time. I think as someone who outlines, they're the outline is spending that time up front rather than as you go. So I have to have an endpoint. My process is, there's an actual name for it, and I can't remember the guy who created it. He's a novelist. It's called the snowflake method. And, his thought is that, no two snowflakes are alike. And if you look at he's an engineer. So, he's like, if you look at a snowflake under a microscope and they have all these different crystals that branch off from each other, and those are your chapters and your scenes and your very more technical than I ever get with it. But the idea is to start with that one sentence. What is the essence of your story? So like for A Killer Secret, my first novel, the sentence was something like, what if, a guy walks into a psychologist's office and tells her that he's a serial killer? So that's kind of the premise, the one line kind of, takeaway from the book. And then you take that sentence and you build it into a paragraph that's a little more descriptive, and then you take the sentences of that paragraph and build it into a page, and so on and so forth. And so you're kind of just building on what you've got, and then in the end, you've got kind of for me, I've got like a 5 to 8 page. It's almost like a 5 to 8 page report on the book I'm about to write, because it does give away the secrets. It wouldn't be anything I would share with someone. But then I'm able to take that and make it, break it into scenes and chapters, and that helps me. And for me, I have to build in cushion though, because if I just sat down and said, okay, in this scene, this happens, and then someone has to say this, and someone has to say this, and someone has to do this, it wouldn't be exciting enough to keep me interested for 90,000 words. And I don't think if I'm not excited, I don't think my readers would be.
Right.
So I leave that room for improv within the scenes and chapters too. And I do end up, as I write, things do change in my outline based on, oh man, this is cool. Sometimes it's like, I don't even know where that came from. This character just did it, but I'm glad that they did.
Okay. So before we jump into the two novels and talk about them specifically, you talk about outlining the story, but how much work do you put into the character development at the beginning of writing a novel? Because I'm thinking like a serial killer. How much do you know about this character before you write chapter 1? Like, have you figured them all out completely? You know everything about them before you start writing, or did you find out more while you're writing about this character?
I do. I'm kind of pulling this up as I go so I can look at it, but I do create kind of a character sheet for each of the main characters. But I wouldn't say that I know each character at the beginning of a book. I feel like, so in my character sheet, I've got kind of their role in the story, right? So either the protagonist or the antagonist, or maybe they're a secondary character, but they are important to a particular piece of action. Their occupation, their physical description, a little bit about their personality and habits, background, motivation. I give each one of them a goal. Hopefully, something will propel them through the story, and they won't just be a flat character that doesn't change throughout the story. I think about what their internal and external conflicts might be within the story. And then how do they change by the end of the story? And so that's kind of what I've got in that sheet. And it's almost like, if I were to read that about you, I wouldn't necessarily know everything about you, but it gives me an idea of the kind of person you are. And then I can write from that point of view. But I definitely learn more about them as I go. And sometimes things that they do, and I say they do in quotes, makes me go back and think, okay, maybe they aren't like this, or maybe this isn't their motivation. So to me, that's fun, because it's almost like I'm learning about new people. They just don't happen to be real people.
Okay. I like that. What about hiding something in your writing? That's something that makes you smile or makes you go, oh, I can't wait for my reader to unpack this. Like, you kind of hide these little things, these little surprises in your writing. Do you do that? And if you do, does that give you some kind of a feeling of accomplishment that you're able to craft the story in a way that's going to surprise somebody?
Oh, I love doing that. And that's, for me, I'm not sure I would be able to do that if I didn't kind of outline the story,
Right.
Giving little hints throughout. And for me, it's that how much of a hint should I give without giving something away, but that won't just be blown past when they're reading, a chapter and not get it. I want people to pick up on something, but not necessarily know, oh, at the end, that's going to be important, or 30, pages in the future, that'll be important. So I try to build in foreshadowing and things that tie back. And honestly, that's kind of fun for me too, because, like I said, my wife reads my books first. And so I can kind of ask her afterwards, like, oh, did you pick up on that? And, did you see that? And like I said, I don't want it to be so overt that people are like, oh, I know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
And that's also, how do I put in twists that are twists and people don't see things coming. So for me, that's kind of the fun part of crafting the story.
Yeah. And what I like when an author brings reality into their writing, because like for me, if I want to go out now and drive to the store and buy some whiskey, I know where the store is. I know which way I would normally go, but there might be a reason I turn left instead of right. And that turning left might change my entire day, might change
Absolutely.
my entire story. So when you're writing maybe the first novel, was it more step 1, step 2, step 3 in order and how it normally would happen? And it's like, oh, that's pretty predictable. Is that kind of how the first one felt?
It honestly felt that way when I was writing it, because I think because I knew the twists and I knew the things that was thrown in. And so I really genuinely wasn't sure, okay, did I do this right? Did I, like I said, give too much away too early? And so that's where, having those early readers helped me figure out, okay, I did okay. Or this one, ooh, that was too much. I need to pull that back. Or, this one didn't even work at all. I'm just going to throw it out.
See, I love picking through your process and figuring this out, because that when I come to read your book now, I'm going to kind of be anticipating some of those things are going to pop out at me during the story and catch me off guard and take me down another path I wasn't expecting to go on. And that's what I find interesting, is when I feel like I'm part of the book, not just a passenger, but I'm engaged with this, and I feel like I'm part of the story. That's when you can't put it down.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm the kind of reader that my wife hates this, reading and watching TV. Like my brain just goes to, oh, I think this is going to happen next. Or, oh, that's the guy who did it. She hates that because she just wants to enjoy the story and not think about it. But I can't help it. And so I know there's other readers out there who are always like, ooh, I think this is important. And they guess the end. And I've been lucky so far in the reviews I've gotten that very few people have guessed, oh, that was going to happen. So hopefully I'm doing things right.
Okay. So let's talk about the two books. Let's talk about A Killer's Secret. It was 2019, I believe you said?
Yes. Yeah.
And the one thing you said to me when we talked earlier was this was a slow burn. And I like this because that's a different approach to your second novel. But kind of explain to me, did you understand the slow burn aspect of this first novel when you were writing, or did you understand it when you were done?
I purposely set out to be a very slow burn, kind of intimate novel.
Okay.
And so I'll tell you that I was actually kind of hurt by some reviews that thought, oh man, it was really slow in the beginning, but once the action picks up, it was awesome. Cause I'm like, oh, but I wanted it to be like that, and so I spent time in the upfront, from the point of view of the three main characters, so you could get to know them, and not in a way that I still don't think that it was like a waste of time or didn't pertain to the story or propel it forward. It was more of a character development in that beginning. So you would know the kind of people that you're dealing with. And I think, like I said, A Killer's Secret is, about a guy who goes to a psychologist and tells her he's a serial killer. But the main character is, for me anyway, I mean, all three of them have pretty much equal weight, and you hear the story from each of their point of view. But she is the female psychologist. She's living with a much older guy who's also her business partner and a psychologist himself. He used to be her college professor. He used to be well known in the industry and well respected. He's kind of on the downward slide of his career, kind of lost face with people in the industry. And so that's where he's coming from. She's coming from the point of view of, I don't know if I should be in this relationship with him. I don't even know that I should be a psychologist. I don't know that I'm helping anyone. And then that one day, her patient, Timothy, who's one of the third main character, comes in and tells her that, hey, I'm a serial killer and I'm actively stalking someone. And you don't know why he tells her that. You don't know why she doesn't go to the police right away. And it just becomes this kind of cat and mouse of, I'm going to figure out what's really going on with my patient. And then, you start to see her really getting more into her profession and really wanting to help somebody. It's weird that the person she wants to help is someone who says that they kill people, but, and I think, stepping back, I wanted this to be about the fact that all of us have secrets. Every one of us has something that we don't want the world to know about.
Right.
And that, we guard with everything we have. But very few secrets are worth killing to keep. And those are the ones that I think, make a compelling story. And so the story unravels and eventually you figure out, people do die and try to decide who's dying next and who's going to survive. That's another thing. I like to kill my characters.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. So, okay. I love that. Okay. So in comparison to that, in contrast, The Fall of Faith, as you said, was more fast paced. Now, did you do this on purpose because you had those reviews in the back of your head going, that was slow burn and I don't know. Were you reacting to that, or was this always in the plans to go slow and fast?
Oh no, I was reacting, very much reacting.
Really?
I thought of it as a fun learning experience too. Like I said, in A Killer Secret, I wanted it to be slow burn. I wanted you to have point of view from three different characters. And really in that first novel, there weren't a whole lot of secondary or tertiary characters. I mean, there were, but they didn't get enough, screen time to, really be a full-fledged character. So I wanted to play with, point of view. What if I only had one person's point of view? I wanted to play with, like, what if I had way more characters than my first novel? And yeah, I had the reviews of, hey, this thing started out slow. So I thought, all right, I'll start something fast as well. Cause, for me, I've only written 2 novels. I feel like I have a lot to learn. And I also feel like I don't know what I like to write best yet. The way that I like to write best yet. So I thought it would be a challenge, and it was certainly a fun one. And hopefully, people love the story as well.
When you're writing, do you have a conversation with your characters at all? Do you talk to them?
Oh God, yes. I feel like this might be used against me. In like a
warning. Yeah,
a competency hearing at some point. But yeah, I mean, you can't help it. In fact, my wife calls it my book brain. Like, I might be sitting next to her on the couch, but I'm not there. I'm still in the story and still thinking about the person I'm writing about in that particular part of the book, or, what they might do. I will, sometimes when I'm stuck in a scene, I'll just start writing, and sometimes it's just dialogue, like, and it's almost like dialogue back and forth between, unknown narrator and person on the page. And a lot of that gets scrapped, but it helps me get to know the character better. And I think the more the character feels real to the reader and to the writer, the more real the story feels, and the more honest the character's reactions are to things that happen to them during the story.
Okay. So the reason I'm asking that, if you have a conversation, is what do you feel is your obligation to your character as the writer? What do you feel like you owe your character to help their story come alive in this novel?
Well, I certainly don't feel like I owe it to them to keep them alive, even if they're a main character. But I feel like I do owe each of them. I need to do the best I can to explain their part in the story that I'm telling, and kind of goes back to my character sheets. Why they do what they do. What internal conflict. Maybe they had a bad childhood, and it's not necessarily written explicitly in my novel, but I kind of have. Oh, he had a really bad childhood, or his first marriage didn't work out, and so that's why he doesn't trust women or whatever. And so I feel like I almost feel like someone writing a writer of someone's biography, right? Like I want to get it right. Or these are fictional characters, so getting it right is up for me to decide. But I really want to make sure that they feel real, particularly for my readers, because there's so many books that you can read. And I mean, not that there's a lot of bad books. I'm just saying there's books where, stories feel, the story's nice, but the characters are kind of one dimensional, right? And that's also, when I started writing thrillers, I didn't want to write the, kind of, action packed, thriller where things are blowing up all over the place, and you've got the crime stopper who may be a cop, maybe an ex-cop, maybe just a normal citizen, and all this action happens. I like reading those, but at the end of the book, do you really know anything about the character? And do you really remember the story? You may remember the things that blew up, but my goal is to write something that will stay with somebody for a while. And I think that's because those are the books that I gravitate towards, or the ones that maybe have an underlying theme that's a little bigger than the action. And if someone walks away and doesn't get that theme, but they enjoyed the book, that's cool too. I want that to be there for the readers who are like me.
Okay, Jeff, before we talk to new authors and kind of encourage them in their writing process from your point of view, take me through your website. I have it up on the screen while we're chatting here. Take me through the website. What can we find when we come to your website, and where should we go first when we pop onto your website?
Yeah. On the homepage, I think right now you'll see a video of some of the recent reviews of The Fall of Faith. And then under that, there is a form for my readers circle. That is my email newsletter. I do not bother my newsletter subscribers very often. I probably should bother them more. I don't necessarily have a monthly mailing. It's just when I have something to say.
Good.
And then there's links to my social and my bio on the homepage as well. But the main thing is you can read descriptions of both my books. You can see media reviews and reader reviews. There's links to buy my books directly from my site. That's kind of a newer thing I'm trying out. You can buy the ebook, the paperback, and the hardback directly from me.
Okay.
But there's also links for each book to go out to almost any online bookseller. I'm on the main 4 or 5, plus some of the smaller ones that are serviced by those larger ones. Amazon and Apple and Google and Kobo and Barnes and Noble. And then because I don't write very fast and also want to continue to be creative, I also have a store on there that has t-shirts and all kinds of stuff. A lot of it's based on my books, but some is just based on, literary things. And then I have a blog that, again, I don't write monthly or weekly on, but when I have something interesting to say, I share it.
Great. So that's the website. And the website again, Jeff?
JeffBerney.com.
There you go. Then we'll have links in the show notes for that. Okay. So for new authors, Jeff, that are going to get into the space, they love the genre that you're writing in. or they want to write in something similar, and they're sitting with a blank page in front of them. They need just a little bit of push to get started. From your point of view, where should an author start? What are some good practices to put into place to help the writing process start flowing?
I think the first thing is to figure out what kind of writer you are, whether you do need that outline or you can just start writing. And I think I said, I kind of figured that out trial and error. I tried to sit down and just write and it didn't work for me. So I think you'll figure that out pretty quickly. And then, my main piece of advice is to just keep writing. I can't remember who said it, probably someone super famous that I should be slapped for not remembering, but everyone's first draft, I don't care who you are, everyone's first draft is awful. But just get that story out. Like, just getting a first draft is farther than most people will get in their life. There aren't,
right.
I think everybody has at least one story in them that would be a great novel, if not a novella. But most people don't do it. And understand that this is a long process, and don't beat yourself up. There's a lot of people out there that will say you have to write every day or you have to write a certain number of words every day. I'm not in a position where I can do that. I'm not saying that that's bad. I would love to be able to write a little bit each day. And I do think it does help you, especially if you're not an experienced writer, and don't do that for your day job. I think, even if you can put in a sentence or two or 5 minutes a day,
right.
Kind of propelling your story forward, that's great. But again, don't beat yourself up. Everybody has a different life. Everybody has different situations.
Yeah.
Just don't stop.
Good. And then the one thing I always like to encourage people to do when they purchase your items online is to go to that spot and leave a review for the author. And I just jump back to what you said about the slow burn for novel 1 and the faster pace of novel 2 as a direct result of feedback.
Yes. Yeah.
Right. Getting that kind of feedback and those reviews helps to shape and give feedback to the author, even if the author doesn't completely agree, because that was the plan for a slow burn, right? But tell me, let's encourage people, Jeff, to leave reviews. How important are they to you as an author?
Oh, and I'll step back a second and say that before I became a novelist, I don't think that I'd really left a review on anyone's book. And I feel bad about that. I think it's one of those things where you just don't think of as a reader. Now, sometimes when I'll write on a Kindle or read on a Kindle, and at the end it pops up, do you want to leave a review? I'll leave stars all the time, but no review. And stars are great, but the algorithms that are used on these online bookstores, particularly Amazon, are based on the number of reviews that a book gets. So like the magic number is 50. If you get at least 50 reviews, that shows Amazon, people are actually reading this. And they'll start kind of slowly promoting it as well. So, just purely mechanically and, promotionally, it makes a difference to whether or not a book might be seen by more people. But then, for me, I am not the kind of person who shies away from reading reviews or bad reviews. I want reviews. I've gotten several, particularly for my first novel, that were 1 star, wish I could give a 0, did not finish. And that's okay, because those are the people who, that's not my audience. And I'm cool that they left a review, because the other thing that I think, as a consumer, if I went on and saw something only had 5-star reviews and everybody loved it, nobody had anything negative to say about it,
right.
I wouldn't necessarily trust that. So I always ask for honest reviews, even when I'm giving a free book away as a review copy. I'm like, there's no strings. You don't have to tell me when you review it. If you give it a bad review, that's great. I still want you to give it a review, not just stars. So I can learn, okay, either that person isn't my audience, or I really do need to work on this part of my writing process.
That's a great response, Jeff, to that question. And I just want people to understand the power of those words, right? And they do mean something. And when authors are referring back to them and helping them to grow and learn from them and shape the next novel, maybe, it's kind of amazing that your community has that power to help support you and encourage you at the same time. I love it.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Right. So everyone head over to the links in the show notes. You can buy the book directly from Jeff, which is great because then Jeff will make a little bit more money than buying it somewhere else, which we all know. But leave a review anyways, and also reach out to Jeff and leave him some comments about his episode here on Living the Next Chapter. And Jeff, I got to tell you, your voice is gold. I know a couple other podcasters are going to love to have you on their show just to have those magical vocal cords of yours dance across our ears. I love it. It's great. Thank you so much for making time to be on Living the Next Chapter. It's great to meet you. And I'm looking forward to all the great things that are coming down the road. Is there anything new coming? Can you let us know?
Well, yes, I am working on a sequel to A Killer Secret. In fact, I kind of have a 6-book arc in that planned series. But again, I write very slowly, so it might be a couple years before that next book comes out. But yeah, that's what I'm working on at the moment. Okay.
Keep me in mind. I'd love to have you back, even if it's 2 years from now. I would love to have you back on the podcast. Okay.
I appreciate that.
And
Thanks for having me.
We'll get you some Canadian whiskey there for your collection, and
perfect.
We'll work on that. So thanks for being here, Jeff. It's so nice to meet you.
Great to meet you. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you for subscribing and following. And you're listening this far in the podcast, so you are my best friend. I'm sorry, but you are now my best friend. So welcome. Nice to meet you. Thank you for being here. LivingTheNextChapter.com has a link on the website to our Facebook group. Are you on Facebook? Probably. You can go there and you can actually interact with our guests. You can talk to them. You can hear more about their journey, about their books. You can speak to them directly. You don't need me. You can come right over to livingthenextchapter.com, click on our Facebook link to our community. You can talk to other listeners of the podcast from around the world who are on Facebook. And, again, speak with our guests. Don't you want to speak to the guests you just heard from? Yeah, you can do that on Living the Next Chapter. Go over there. There's links to our Facebook group, and you're welcome to join. Thanks for listening.
Mindshift Power Podcast, the podcast for teenagers and those who work with them. There's a huge problem in America today. There's a very large disconnect between teenagers and the adults who work with them. I'm looking to bridge that gap with real, raw, honest conversation, not held back by the chains of political correctness. You cannot solve a problem you do not understand. Want to understand teenagers today? Listen to this podcast. This podcast is for teens in the U.S. and Canada. To learn more, go to fatimabay.com/podcast or just look for Mindshift Power Podcast on any listening platform. I look forward to you being a faithful listener.